At 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated, every public screen on Earth synchronized without warning. Trains slowed, night markets paused, and orbital traffic held position as a single seal unfolded in pale blue light. Commander Elias Rourke watched it from the operations deck, coffee cooling in his hand, the hum of the lunar ring steady beneath his boots. The message was formal, ancient, and precise. By unanimous decree of the Galactic Concord, the Truce of Sol was terminated. Hostilities authorized. Compliance expected. The script carried the gravity of ritual, as if age alone could weigh a species into submission. Rourke read it once. He exhaled. They finally chose today. Around him, no alarms sounded. Analysts didn't shout. The deck kept its rhythm, fingers moving, eyes calm. A junior officer glanced up. "Do we escalate readiness, sir?" Rourke shook his head. "Maintain posture." Above Earth, space rippled. Translation wakes flared like cold lightning as the Concord's vanguard arrived, geometry immaculate, holes etched with heraldry meant to be seen from worlds below. Their formation spread with theatrical patience, confident the audience would be afraid. Cities did not darken. Elevators continued. A late shuttle kissed the pad in Nairobi while a news anchor blinked at the seal and adjusted her mic. The lack of panic puzzled the watchers in orbit, though their sensors said nothing was wrong. Sensors often lied to those who trusted them too much. On the far side of the moon, the ring accepted new loads without comment. Rourke's console lit with confirmations that looked boring on purpose. Energy curves held. Mass balances stayed polite. Gravity gradients slept. A channel request arrived, stamped with Concord authority. Rourke accepted it. High Executive Vraxel Thulin filled the display, scales polished, eyes bright with ceremony. "Species of Sol," Vraxel announced, voice layered with translation harmonics, "you stand in violation by irrelevance. The truce ends because you failed to matter." Rourke nodded as if listening to weather. "Understood." Vraxel paused. "You are to surrender your orbital assets and prepare for inspection." "Negative," Rourke said. "We'll continue as scheduled." A murmur rippled across the alien bridge behind Vraxel. The executor leaned forward. "You misunderstand. Our fleets are present." "We noticed," Rourke replied. "Welcome." Silence stretched. Vraxel's frills stiffened. "Your shields are down." "Yes." "You display no evacuation." "Correct." "You mock us." Rourke's mouth curved, not unkindly. "No, Executor. We're hosting." The channel cut. The Concord fleet adjusted, tightening arcs, running intimidation passes that had broken lesser worlds. Their pilots felt it then, a whisper in the instruments, a soft disagreement between plotted vectors and achieved motion. Minor, dismissible. Until it wasn't. "Report," Vraxel snapped. Drift with intolerance, came the answer, then a frown. Correction lag increasing. On Earth, Rourke's deck received a different report. A single line highlighted itself, anomalous curvature detected, Sol inner volume. He tapped it away. "Sir," the junior officer said quietly, "they're probing." "Let them," Rourke said. "We complied with the truce." The probe launched, sleek and curious. It crossed an invisible seam and vanished without flare, without debris, without heat. It simply failed to arrive anywhere. On the Concord bridge, voices rose. "Executor," an aide whispered, "the probe is unaccounted for." Vraxel straightened, anger sharpening his posture. "Weapons to readiness." Rourke watched the fleet tense like a held breath. He set his cup down. "Note the time," he told his team. History likes timestamps. A second ripple touched space, subtle as a held note. The stars did not move. Space between them did. Above Earth, the fleet found itself gently, inexorably, out of place. Vectors refused clean solutions. Course corrections compounded into hesitation, then into fear. The Concord captains requested clarification. None came that made sense. Rourke opened a private line to the ring's custodian, an old system with a younger mind. Status? Contained, the voice replied. Parameters nominal. Good, Rourke said. Keep it boring. On the alien bridge, Vraxel felt the room tilt, not physically, but in certainty. He ordered a warning shot, calibrated to scorch vacuum and pride alike. The beam fired and bent, not sharply, but enough to miss, carving a line that curved like a smile. Gasps answered physics. Vraxel slammed a claw down. Increase output. Another shot folded inward, light arguing with itself before dimming to nothing. The bridge lights flickered as if embarrassed. Down below, a child counted stars from a rooftop and frowned when one seemed closer. Her father shrugged. Probably a trick of the air. Rourke watched the data bloom and collapse, a garden of possibilities pruned by rules he trusted. They'll escalate, he said. They always do. The junior officer swallowed. And us? We wait, Rourke replied. Chapter 1 is theirs. A final message burst through, stripped of ceremony. Human Commander, Vraxel said, voice raw, explain this anomaly. Rourke leaned in, not to threaten, but to be heard. Executor, for 3,000 years you measured us by what we didn't do. You mistook silence for weakness. Stand down, Vraxel demanded. No, Rourke said. Stand by. He closed the channel and nodded once. Somewhere, mass shifted by design. Somewhere else, time took a longer path. The Sol system settled into a shape it had practiced. Above Earth, the fleet stopped drifting and began falling, not toward the planet, but toward an answer it could not escape. On Rourke's deck, a timer rolled forward. No cheers followed. Preparation had replaced celebration long ago. He straightened his jacket and addressed the room. Document everything. Be polite. Do not gloat. Faces nodded. The ring hummed, patient as stone. Outside, the Concord fleet struggled against a geometry it had never studied. The first chapter closed without explosions, only with understanding delayed. Rourke allowed himself a breath. The truce was over. The work, finally, had begun. He glanced at the timestamp again, committing it to memory, knowing tomorrow the galaxy would ask questions, and answers would arrive slowly, shaped by gravity, restraint, and the quiet certainty that humanity had prepared exactly long enough, for this moment alone, and nothing beyond it. The Concord fleet discovered fear the way sailors discover reefs, by tearing their hulls open on something that never appeared on charts. Minutes after the drift stabilized into a slow, unavoidable fall, reports flooded Vraxel Thorne's command deck, each one contradicting the last. Engines burned yet gained nothing. Orientation systems disagreed with stars that refused to stay fixed. Timestamps misaligned by fractions that grew into seconds. Reassert formation, Vraxel ordered. His voice remained ceremonial, but the cadence had cracked. Anchor to command vector. Vector's unstable, a navigator replied. We compensate, and compensation compounds. Vraxel turned to the tactical sphere. Sol looked unchanged. Earth spun. The moon held its orbit. Nothing radiated threat. Nothing behaved. Identify the mechanism. Silence answered. Then, quietly, we cannot. On Earth, Commander Elias Rourke watched the same data through a calmer lens. They're trying to solve it like a weapon, he said. They'll fail until they accept it's a place. The junior officer beside him frowned. A place? A condition, Rourke said. We shape the room, not the guests. A Concord cruiser attempted a micro-jump, a desperate flicker meant to step sideways out of danger. The ship vanished, then returned half a kilometer out of alignment, its hull sheared along a seam that hadn't existed a moment before. Emergency beacons screamed into the void. No rescue followed. Rescue required approach, and approach was impossible. Executor, an aide whispered, crew casualties rising. Vraxel's mandibles tightened. Open a channel. All frequencies. Rourke accepted before the request finished resolving. Vraxel appeared again, closer now, the bridge behind him tense and dim. "You promised hospitality," the executor said. "This is entrapment." "We promised continuity," Rourke replied. "You're still here. You're just learning where. You violate the truce." Rourke shook his head. "We followed it exactly. No expansion. No prohibited weapons. No aggression." He paused. "We did not agree to remain simple." Vraxel's eyes flicked to incoming alerts. "Our chronometers disagree. Our pilots report lost seconds." "Expected," Rourke said. "Time prefers curves. You speak in riddles. Because you asked the wrong questions for 3 millennia." The channel cut again, this time by alien hands. Vraxel spun, rage shedding its ritual casing. "Escalate. All batteries. Break their control." Beams lanced outward, brighter than before, stitched into patterns that had broken worlds. They struck nothing directly. Space answered by bending the paths, smearing intent into geometry. Energy bled away as if embarrassed to be present. Several emitters overloaded, not explosively, but quietly, systems refusing to continue. On Earth, a soft chime marked a threshold crossed. Rourke's console offered a suggestion. He dismissed it. "Not yet." "Sir," the junior officer said, voice steady despite the numbers, "civilian networks are asking if they should be concerned." Rourke considered the globe. "Tell them to keep their plans. Dinner matters." Above the moon, the Concord fleet's internal cohesion fractured. Captains argued for retreat. Engineers begged for time they did not have. A science vessel proposed surrender to collect data. Vraxel overrode them all. The humans bluff. Pressure reveals truth. A dreadnought surged forward under maximum thrust. Its bow met resistance like thick air. The ship slowed, then slowed again, then stopped, engines howling against a refusal that could not be burned through. The hull groaned. Gravity inside spiked unevenly. Crew clung to railings as floors forgot which way was down. On Rourke's deck, someone whispered, "They're hurting themselves." "Yes," Rourke said. "Arrogance is heavy." The dreadnought's captain opened a private channel, bypassing Concord protocol. His face filled Rourke's screen, eyes wide, scales dulled by fear. "Human," he said, dropping honorifics, "what is happening?" Rourke met his gaze. "You entered a system we finished preparing." "For what?" "For patience," Rourke said. "And for guests who don't listen." The captain swallowed. "If we cease hostilities?" "Your motion will still decay," Rourke said. "But it will hurt less." The channel ended. On Vraxel's bridge, the admission sparked chaos. "They speak to us individually," someone shouted. "They divide us." Vraxel slammed his staff against the deck. "Hold." But holding required anchors, and anchors required a frame of reference that no longer applied. Ships drifted closer together, not colliding, but clustering as space shepherded mass into comfortable arrangements. The fleet was becoming a sculpture. Rourke received a new report, flagged amber. Executor Thuan requests negotiation. Rourke straightened. "Route it." Vraxel appeared, smaller somehow. "You claim compliance," he said. "Explain your method." Rourke chose his words carefully. "We stopped asking how to win wars and asked how to end them before they start. We learned the language of limits. You weaponized physics." "We studied it," Rourke said. "Weaponization implies intent to harm. This is intent to contain." Vraxel's gaze dropped. "Release us." Rourke shook his head once. "Not yet. Then you will be hunted." Rourke's expression softened. "Executor, you're already inside the lesson. Hunting requires pursuit." The channel closed. The Concord fleet settled further, motion bleeding away into stillness that felt like surrender. On Earth, the night markets reopened fully. Music returned to the air. Rourke allowed himself a brief glance at the stars, each one exactly where it belonged, and one place that belonged to humanity alone. Chapter 2 ended without triumph, only with comprehension beginning to form, heavy and unavoidable, like gravity finally noticed. The Concord fleet stopped trying to move. That decision did not come as an order. It emerged as consensus born from exhaustion, fear, and the slow realization that effort itself was feeding the trap. Engines powered down across dozens of holes. Crews floated in uncertain gravity, bruised and silent. Outside, the Sol system held them gently, firmly, like a closed hand that had no intention of tightening further. On Earth, Commander Elias Rourke stood before a wall of live feeds. Ships hung in impossible constellations, aligned by forces no alien textbook had ever named. Containment stable, an analyst said. No further degradation. Good, Rourke replied. Then we can talk. He opened a channel to the Concord flagship. This time, Vraxel Thune appeared without regalia. The executor looked older, his posture stripped of ceremony, his voice raw and unshielded. End this, Vraxel said. You have demonstrated superiority. Rourke shook his head. That word is yours, not ours. You have trapped a fleet, Vraxel snapped. You could destroy us. Yes, Rourke said evenly. And you expected us to. Vraxel hesitated. Is that not victory? Rourke folded his hands. Victory is when this never happens again. Silence stretched between them, not hostile now, but heavy with recalculation. Vraxel finally spoke. Explain. Rourke gestured, and the feed shifted to a model of the Sol system. Lines appeared, not weapons, not shields, but gradients, flows, relationships. You enforced the truce by limiting what we could build. You never asked what we could learn. Vraxel watched, breathing shallowly. We studied gravity as infrastructure, Rourke continued. Time as a negotiable variable. Mass as something that could be persuaded, not commanded. We didn't create a fortress. We created a condition. Entering Sol means agreeing to its rules. You turned your home into a cage, Vraxel said. Rourke smiled faintly. Into a room. You came in shouting. On the flagship, an aide whispered urgently, but Vraxel raised a hand. Why wait 3,000 years, he asked. Why not strike when we were strongest? Because strength advertises itself, Rourke replied. We preferred privacy. Vraxel's eyes flicked to the trapped fleet, then back. If you release us, the Concord will return. No, Rourke said. You won't. And you are certain? Rourke's voice softened. Executor, your entire doctrine assumes domination is inevitable. We built something that makes domination expensive and pointless. You can leave, slowly, safely, and tell the galaxy exactly what you saw. Or you can stay until time itself persuades you. Vraxel looked away. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with the sound of an empire thinking. Across the Concord fleet, systems stabilized further as panic drained away. Crews adapted. Engineers measured instead of cursed. Scientists recorded instead of screamed. The fear shifted into something colder, more dangerous, understanding. On Earth, a message began to circulate, authored by no single nation, translated into every known language. It was brief. To the Galactic Concord. You declared war on a species you believed had waited. We did. We waited to finish. Rourke watched the message transmit, then turned to his team. Initiate phased release. A murmur rippled through the deck. Sir, the junior officer said, are you sure? Yes, Rourke said. Lessons stick better when the student leaves alive. In space, the Sol condition relaxed by fractions so small they felt like mercy. The outermost Concord vessels drifted free, trajectories corrected by physics that no longer resisted. One by one, ships regained clean vectors, limping, humbled, intact. Vraxel remained on the channel as the flagship eased loose last. His voice was quiet. You could have ended us. Rourke nodded. And become what you expected. What do you want from us? Vraxel asked. Rourke considered the stars beyond the trapped fleet, the vastness that had once terrified humanity into treaties and silence. Distance, he said. And memory. The executor closed his eyes. The truce? Rourke shook his head. That was yours. This is ours. The flagship slipped free. Space resumed its familiar indifference. The Sol system returned to its patient equilibrium, gradient smoothing, time behaving, mass content to stay where it belonged. On Earth, dawn broke. Markets filled. Children went to school. A news anchor smiled and said the crisis had passed, though no one used the word victory. Rourke stood alone for a moment after the feeds went dark. He felt no triumph, only completion. Humanity had not laughed because war was funny. They had laughed because the outcome was already known, because preparation had replaced fear, because for once, the future had arrived exactly on schedule. Far beyond Sol, the Concord fleet regrouped in shaken silence. Reports would spread. Doctrines would fracture. Maps would be redrawn with a wide, respectful margin around a single yellow star. The galaxy would learn what the truce had truly been. Not a leash. A warning. And humanity, having delivered it at last, turned back to the quiet work of living, content that the room they had shaped would remain theirs, uninvited and undefeated, for as long as patience endured. The galaxy did not react all at once. Shock never travels that way. It spreads in fragments, through reports rewritten too many times, through rumors sharpened by fear, through silence where confidence once lived. Weeks after the Concord fleet limped home, the aftershocks reached Earth in the form of questions no one could answer quickly. Commander Elias Rourke read them every morning. Diplomatic inquiries. Trade suspensions disguised as audits. Requests for clarification phrased as compliments. He answered none immediately. Delay had become a language he spoke fluently. On the observation deck, Earth turned beneath transparent alloy, calm and ordinary. A junior officer joined him, hands clasped behind his back. Sir, the Concord Assembly is calling an emergency session. Rourke nodded. They would. They're requesting your presence. Of course they are, Rourke said. They want the shape of the cage drawn in words. The chamber of the Galactic Concord had not changed in 3,000 years. Tiered platforms arced around a central void, each species arranged by status, gravity preference, and tradition. When Rourke appeared at the center, alone, unarmed, human scale, the noise dimmed to a low, uncertain hum. Vraxel Thuan watched from his seat, no longer elevated above the others. His authority had survived, but not intact. A delegate rose, crystalline and radiant. Human representative, you exceeded all projections. You destabilized interstellar order. Rourke inclined his head. Order depends on assumptions. Another voice cut in, sharp and metallic. You concealed a strategic capability. Rourke smiled faintly. You forbade disclosure. We complied. Murmurs rippled outward. Vraxel stood slowly. You declared no intent to conquer. Yet you possess power beyond any known force. Yes, Rourke said. Power is not desire. Then define your objective, Vraxel demanded. Rourke looked around the chamber, at species who had ruled by scale, by age, by violence refined into doctrine. We want what we always wanted, he said. To be left alone without being weak. A delegate laughed, brittle and disbelieving. Isolation breeds stagnation. Rourke's gaze sharpened. So does complacency. The chamber quieted. Vraxel studied him. You reshaped your star system. That effort alone implies ambition. It implies fear, Rourke corrected. Fear of extinction. Fear is honest. A pause followed, then a question that carried more weight than accusation. If we provoke you again? Rourke did not answer immediately. He let the silence stretch, not as intimidation, but as demonstration. When he spoke, his voice was even. Then soul will remain soul. No threat. No flourish. The meaning landed anyway. The session adjourned without resolution. That, too, was a change. Outside the chamber, reporters waited with questions sharpened into weapons. Rourke passed them all, his image already fracturing into legend. Back on Earth, life adjusted in small ways. Defense budgets fell. Research budgets rose. Students studied physics with renewed seriousness. Children played games where gravity behaved oddly, laughing when rules bent. Humanity did not celebrate. Celebration implied relief. What they felt instead was alignment. Rourke met with his team one last time before stepping down. The condition holds, an analyst said. Soul remains stable. External incursions unlikely. Good, Rourke said. Then we've done our part. The junior officer hesitated. Sir, will they ever stop being afraid of us? Rourke considered the question, then shook his head. Fear fades. Memory doesn't. He left command quietly. No ceremony followed him. History would handle that later. Far from Seoul, the Concord rewrote its maps. Borders softened. Expansion slowed. Fleets trained differently, less for conquest, more for retreat. Young officers learned a new cautionary phrase: don't knock on closed systems. Vraxel Thun watched these changes from a diminished platform. He carried the weight of having been first, of having seen behind the curtain and lived. One night, alone, he replayed the final exchange with the human commander. Victory is when this never happens again. For the first time in his long life, Vraxel wondered if dominance had ever been the point. In Seoul, the containment lattice slept. Not dismantled. Not forgotten. Simply resting, like a muscle trained and trusted. Humanity turned its attention inward again, not in hiding, but in confidence. Art flourished. Science deepened. Exploration resumed, careful and consensual. The galaxy watched from a respectful distance. Years later, a child asked her teacher why humans never ruled the stars if they could. The teacher smiled and answered simply. Because ruling is noisy. And somewhere beneath familiar skies, Earth spun on, unchanged to the casual eye, holding within its quiet orbit the knowledge that patience, once spent, never needed to be used again.